Hello, everybody. This is Brian. Now, if you're listening to this, you probably know that I'm in a band called Ninja Sex Party. But what you may not know is that Ninja Sex Party is currently on tour. So we're touring all over the U.S. and one date in Canada and Toronto. But if you want to see us, we'd really appreciate that. Go to ninjasexparty.com/tour for tickets. And also, I'm doing some solo shows, which we're calling Ninja Brian's All-Star Variety Spectacular. You'll see me, the Super Guitar Bros. Jim Roach and I are going to do some of our tracks from our band Go Banana Go. The other thing, I'm doing my smooth jazz stuff there too. I've never played these before, some of my new smooth jazz tracks. You can get those tickets at ninjasexparty.com/tour as well. You're at episode 8 what now?
No, it's 780.
Jeez.
79 or what, it doesn't matter.
But way up there. Just numbers.
Yeah, just consistency. That's the only thing I have going for me.
Have you ever taken a week off since you started?
I took 2 weeks off back in June for the first time, like ever.
This past June?
This past June. 16 years in, I was like, I'm going to take 2 weeks off. And it was like, came back and I had stuff to talk about. It was great. I had stuff to talk about. It was like, oh my God.
Wow, what's that like?
I would have a week off like once every 2 years, but I would still post something. I'm like Steve Novella too, who hasn't had a week off in 17 years.
Which is just amazing. Like, and the fact that he's doing it all, editing himself still.
Yeah.
And also the quality on your show and their show is still so high.
For them, for sure. For me, it's like, yeah. You get into a groove, which is the funny thing too, where like, if the show goes well and it's easy, then I worry like, oh, wait a minute. Have I not worked hard enough on this episode? Is it like, is what I'm doing too pat, too obvious?
Right.
Like, have I made in a groove or a rut? Whatever opportunity there is to worry, I will seize it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot like playing, right?
Completely.
Obviously, given the kind of music that you've been playing for so long with the wedding band, like
right.
At some point, you're probably sort of going on autopilot for a lot of those.
Yeah.
tunes,
There's
right?
aspects of that, but there is that also thing like if you aren't aware of your surroundings and there's a little bit of whatever, then you kind of get freaked out by that where it's like, okay, am I so just a crusty has been that I just don't give a shit about anything, So there's that worry that enters into it too. Like, I don't want to be that. My God, I should be a little nervous. I mean, that's part of the reason I actually sort of stopped being with the band because I was getting so anxious about these weddings. Because I don't know if we talked about this last time, but there's so much money that's thrown around for these weddings,
right.
Which there are many reasons I wanted to get out. One of them was because the entire wedding machine is such a scam. Just across the board. And I was a cog in this scam of like, oh, okay, you want to hire the band? Here's what we cost for this wedding. Now, the night before, we'll be playing for 1/10 the amount. We'll probably do more songs and work harder because it's a festival or it's a bar or it's a concert venue. That's Friday night. We'll get, $1,000 for the band. Saturday, we'll get $14,000 for the band. And it's like, it's the same people, it's the same music, it's the same thing, but we're charging that because we can, because the entire wedding industry is a scam.
And that was 20 what years for you?
24.
Wow.
24 years. Yeah.
Did you see it like get worse over time?
You mean the wedding industry?
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone wanted to get their pound. And again, because you can. So the florists and the caterers and the uplighting and the sound people and the people that give the candles and the people that park the car. It's like everybody realized, oh, there is this cash cow that sort of is here now that we all have to, I'm going to mix metaphors like crazy, but we all have to latch onto the teat as best as we can. And it's just distasteful. And once social media kind of came into it, you start getting that thing of like, not only do we have to have the event be fantastic, now it has to be fantastic for the cameras, and we have to manufacture these moments. So there's like, could we maybe do something where, cannons come out of the bass drum for the vows? And you just start thinking like, I see wedding moments in movies, and I go, oh crap, like someone's going to want this now. Someone's going to want the trombone choir standing up, coming out of the cake because they saw it in, Marry Me, Susan, the movie. And that happens. There was one film, I forget what it was, but it's like a scene in a church and like the trumpet players are in the thing and the guitarist stands up and then the horn players are there and the keyboardists and the singers are all joining in, like all impromptu, which is like to actually do that is to plan something like that because it's like,
impossible.
Where are we going to plug in the amplifiers? How are they going to have speed? Where does this? Then we got a rehearsal. But after I saw that film, I thought someone's going to ask for this. And a year later, it was like, oh, Love Actually. That's the movie, Love Actually. Said, have you ever seen Love Actually? We were thinking of like a Love Actually moment. Or it's like, no, they can't.
Have you ever had anyone ask you to retake something specifically for cameras? Like, hey, could you do that song again so we can...
The only time we had a cousin of the bride was filming the wedding once. Of course, it was the cousin. And the camera was off for all the introductions. So we had to redo the introductions for the camera. That was in New York. I remember that years ago. He was turning the camera off when he thought he was filming. So he had all this footage of like looking at the floor and in the bag and all that. And then we finished and it was like 20 minutes later and he kind of came up. He's like, I didn't get any of the intros.
Oh my God.
Again. So I played it off like, all right, folks, that was the rehearsal. Let's try this again. Let's really get into it. And so that years later, none of us will remember that we're doing this the second time we can watch it. And the response was great and everything. But it was like, really? That's why you don't hire your cousin to do it.
And are people going to watch it?
Yeah. Who is actually watching the wedding videos?
I feel like it's something you watch after your partner breaks up with you. Right.
If they're edited right, if it's like a 10-minute thing, if the videographer has cut together something where it's like, oh, here's highlights, I could see that. But yeah, it's like the people that sit at the concerts like this.
That's right.
And they're at a 2-hour show with the phone up. Again, I'm showing my age or whatever, but I'm like, are you like really going to watch that? Plus, most of these things are streamed anyway, which you can get access to. So it's like,
yeah. For this tour, which we'll talk about, we are going to, for the first time, say, no phones, please. We will have a moment at the end when everyone can break out their phones and you can shoot that. We'll be playing a song. That's your moment. But until then, please put the phones away because it is exactly that the whole time. I went to see Les Claypool's Bastard Jazz here at the Ford recently. And you would think, except, he's obviously an amazing player and the musicians are just incredible. Yeah. And it was just a bad show, start to finish. It was, Les would come out, he'd start doing some riff, and then people would go ape shit on that one riff for like 15 minutes. It was jazz without chord changes.
Yeah. That's the whole jammy thing, which really bugs me, where it's like there are some people that can do some interesting improvisatory explorations, but a lot of it is here's an E chord and let's kind of solo for 20 minutes. And it's like
I know these musicians are better than this. But my point was not that the show was bad. I mean, the musicians were amazing. Actually, the real revelation to me there, do you know Mike Dillon? Do you know this name?
No, I don't think so.
He's a percussionist and a mallets player, and he was playing vibes and marimba or xylophone, I'm not sure. He's like a punk rock vibes player, and he's, just an amazing technical player, and I was really blown away by him. But my point is, this entire audience, this was the most aggressive audience I've seen in years. A bunch of middle-aged people in like their Zappa and Primus gear, where this is a seated amphitheater. It's like 600 people or so. Right. And half of them were pressing to the front, leaning over the lip of the stage with their camera, like pointing it in Les Claypool's face. And I was like, guys, can we please just like dial it back?
Yeah. Jack White, when he has these shows, you give you a bag and you put the camera in the bag. Have you seen this?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So then it's sealed. And like, as you leave, they give you a code to open the bag back up. So you're holding on to your phone, but it's in like a microwave safe bag or whatever. I love that. I think that's a great idea. Dave Chappelle, some other comedians are doing that too, where it's like you got to put the phone in the thing.
Yep.
You hold it, but then you can't film anything with it.
They did that at when I saw the 35th anniversary of Pee-wee's Big Adventure. They did that because Paul Rubens came out and did a Q&A. Actually, I did the Paisley Park tour just after it opened in Minneapolis when I was out there visiting family. It was the same thing. Phone in the thing. And they gave you one moment. They have a obviously purple grand piano. This is Prince's purple grand piano. And this is the moment when you can take out your phone and we will take a picture of you standing next to the purple piano.
Right.
And
that piano's on 5-inch heels too. Interesting. Right? Just to make it perfect for you.
I'm a huge Prince fan. And I was expecting like complete bullshit by that tour, like cash grab. And it was awesome.
Oh, that's good to know.
This is probably 5 or 6 years ago, maybe longer. But it was like they really show you stuff. I paid a little more for the quote unquote VIP tour, and they take you to like his VHS editing suite and all this stuff. And you really got to like see the place. And yeah, I was blown away by how great it was.
Speaking of Les, I remember they did this Tribute to Kings tour. Again, just to harp on Les for a minute, who I respect tremendously.
Yeah.
Which was they were doing all of Farewell to Kings, which is this Rush album. When I heard that they were doing that, I was thinking, how are they going to sing that? Because it's all Getty.
It's that super high.
Back when he was still super high, hitting like open Bs and Cs and stuff. And so I finally saw some footage of people filming, obviously. And he's like singing all of it the octave down. It's like, really? It was weird. I thought, okay, should this bother me as much as it's bothering me? Because when you don't have the, oh yeah, but it's, oh yeah. It's like not quite the.
It really loses the tension.
That's the whole kind of point of it. Like everything else is spot on, the drum parts, the guitar, the synths. It's all great. And then Les is just doing probably half of the vocals an octave down, maybe 2/3. You know, it's like going to see someone sing Nessun Dorma and they're singing it the octave down. You're like, that's not fucking Nessun Dorma. Like you're not singing, you know, Verdi anymore. You're doing whatever. It's just weird.
This is definitely a less popular opinion, but I have the kind of same response to...
Now I'm excited.
Well, I think you're with me on this with Danny Elfman's Big Mess, where like, you know, he's older, he can't hit the high notes anymore, but it's like, for all the other things I didn't like about that album, that also was especially frustrating because he like almost sort of goes for it and it just feels like not very confident or like strong. It's like, oh man, this is not the same.
Did you hear that album, George? The new Elfman solo album?
No. I saw some footage of the show that he did in, where was the big show that
Coachella.
he did? Coachella, right. Which was like, oh my gosh, 80 people on stage or whatever. I'm like, good for you.
Yeah.
But what's the deal?
True to its name, it's a big mess.
Oh.
Look, one of the early episodes of this podcast, discussion of Elfman, Boingo, all this stuff. Big fans of both of us. We listened to this album and did like a kind of reaction thing to it. And we both hated it.
Oh my gosh.
It was like subpar 9 Inch Nails. You know, really electronic.
Oh my God. Us politely after every single track trying to be like, I liked the acoustic. That part was good. And then we just gave up because it was bad.
And a lot of people liked it. Like, this is just our personal preference. And the lyrics were very on the nose about Trump. You know, they're jackboots marching in the streets, you know, kind of like, it's like, okay, I agree with you, but also maybe we could be a little less on the nose.
Maybe we could have gone past the first draft on these lyrics. Maybe we could have punched them up like a teensy bit.
Metaphor or Meta5, yeah.
Title of the episode. Speaking of disappointing Elfman, Brian, I need to talk to you about this.
Yes, tell me.
You know, as I've repeatedly said on this show, I'm not watching more superhero shit. I'm done. But Jory really wanted to watch Multiverse of Madness, and Jory is the only person I will sit through a Marvel movie for. And so we watched it. Holy shit.
Just bad.
Just fucking awful. I can't believe how fucking bad it was. My standards were low, but holy shit.
Well, and it's got like, you know, it's Sam Raimi, right? He's doing another thing. He's directing a Marvel movie. And did Elfman do the score?
You didn't like the musical fight? The Beethoven fight?
I just didn't understand why anything. So you saw it, George?
I saw it in the theaters, yeah. Yeah, I'm a sucker for that stuff.
What did you think?
For me, it's a Big Mac, which I know there is no nutritional value in it. But that salt and fat is just so great.
Yeah, and a lot of people like that too.
Like there's tons of loose weirdness to it, but I am in such awe of the overall Marvel thing that you could have whatever it is, 31 movies and TV shows that all kind of still makes sense and is referential to itself in its weird way. You know, there are threads that just don't go anywhere or that are contradictory, but for the most part, for all of that to be in Kevin Feige's head, the big producer dude, the guy that runs the whole show, that to me is impressive just as a storyteller, as a story writer.
It is certainly unprecedented, you know.
Oh, yeah.
The scope of what they're doing, yeah.
Again, Sam Raimi, I was glad that Sam Raimi did it, that he got a shot at the Marvel ring, as it were. But for me, it's just a fun distraction that I lean into.
Yeah, I think for me on this one, it got to the point where so much was happening that it became the oversaturation thing. Yeah. And it started to be like, I didn't understand why a lot of, like the musical fight cool idea, but what is the point of this and why is it happening?
Right. It's like a set piece opportunity, which is what those films are basically, is these sort of set pieces. And can we string the set pieces together in a way that works better than other films or other opportunities?
I don't know. I feel a lot of those movies for me depend very much on my mood going in. Like, if I walk in a bad mood, I'm going to hate them. And this one, I definitely wasn't in a good mood when I watched. But it's one of these things, too, when Sam Raimi, much like Peter Jackson and a lot of other filmmakers, started out with these like super punk rock, low budget, Evil Dead, Dead Alive kind of stuff, and then to know where they came from and see them with these massive multiplex blockbusters. First of all, it's like, hell yeah, I get paid. But then also, I miss the hunger from the early days, and especially with Sam Raimi, who kept it alive for so long.
I was particularly struck by how bad the CGI looks in this one.
Like the zombie stuff, right?
Not even that, but like the Zoomer reference here is that I felt like I was watching Shark Boy and Lava Girl. Like it looks like that. And it was like, God damn, you could get Robert Rodriguez to make this movie on like a fourth of the budget and it would be way better. Like I would take that.
Did Elfman do the score?
I think he did. Yeah.
He did. And much in the same way that you go through 20 minutes where nothing is happening and the script is dog shit and Benedict Cumberbatch can't keep his American accent straight for longer than 5 seconds, then you get like a tiny little guitar riff and it's like, oh, there's Danny. And then it goes back into the same mass-produced.
He was just on Bullseye, the NPR show, Danny Elfman. And it was a really great interview with him. Did you hear this one?
Yeah.
Just listening to him talk about the early days of Boingo and the part that I liked in the beginning when he was like, I guess might have been a little difficult in the beginning and, everything, maybe I could have been nicer to the people in the band. And, he was a kid at the time, and I think it was very much my way or the highway.
Sure.
But then it was interesting listening to him talk about his film composing. So Tim Burton hired him for Pee-wee's Big Adventure, which was his first major film score. And, he just said this very relatable stuff about every moment I thought I was going to fail.
Right.
And he hires me to do this thing. I have no idea what I'm doing. I've never done a film before. Like, this is completely outside of my league. It's a major studio release.
Right.
And, he's like, I was just kind of trying stuff and hoping for the best, thinking that this score would be, taken out and replaced with a better one at any moment. And then comes up with what I think is one of the all-time great film scores. Legitimately amazing start to finish, still holds up.
Reflects the timbre and the tone of that universe so much so that you hear like 3 bars of it and you're in that world.
That's right.
I just watched Midnight Run last night and he did that best score too, which is a very un-Elfman-y because it's just like a blues.
Very bluesy.
Yeah, harmonica blues rock kind of thing. You would never know that was Elfman, which that's when I was like, okay, this cat's got a palate. It's not all the Tritone Batman stuff.
Yeah.
Which there's a lot of that too.
That Midnight Run score has stayed with me for years too, because it's a bluesy thing with the brass, right?
Right.
Ba, 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 ba. But it's such a great score.
And the comedic nature of it too, which is what struck me, because you could have played those scenes more as drama and anxiety, when they're kind of running away from being shot. But there's this humor that's sort of there, but still keeps it fun and serious in a weird way. And it's just such a perfect film. I don't know, Leighton, if you've ever seen it.
No.
Yeah, Robert De Niro in like one of his, I think, best subtle comedic roles.
Couldn't agree more.
It's a very underplayed comedic role. And then even more underplayed than him is Charles Grodin. Charles Grodin is an accountant that stole money from the mob. And De Niro is a bounty hunter who's bringing Charles Grodin back. And it's his last chance to kind of make some money on this guy. And it's the two of them going cross country. So it's a road thing. I stopped and rewound this. There's the one point where De Niro is calling the guy that's going to pay him all this money. And he knows that his phone is tapped. So he doesn't want him to know where he is. He's like, where are you calling from? Oh, I'm in Boise, Idaho. No, wait, I'm in Anchorage, Alaska. No, wait, I'm whatever.
Right.
And he's like, if you fuck me on this, I swear to God, I'm going to shoot him and dump him in the swamp. Right. And Charles Grodin is standing right next to him. And he looks at Grodin and he goes, and it's the most subtle. I'm doing it no justice because I rewound and watched that like 5 times. It's just so good. It's like, oh my God. And that's what the whole film is this kind of underplayed but broad comedy.
With some big moments too. So there's some big action moments, right?
Helicopters exploding and gunfire. But then, the two of them on the bus, shoulder to shoulder. Why are you unpopular with the Chicago Police Department? And De Niro was just getting so fucking annoyed. Like he's just, you know what? And it's great. And then this music is killer.
One of the all-time great De Niro performances, hands down, comedy or not. If you listen to, I forget what album it's on, but the main theme, where it goes from minor to major, is on a later Boingo song called Try to Believe. So he repurposes kind of the main theme of Midnight Run for a later Boingo song. I think it's on their last album, but it might be Dark at the Edge of the Tunnel, or whatever that is. But yeah, that movie, I grew up watching it. I watch it regularly, once every couple of years, and it never gets old. It is just pure joy from start to finish. Yaphet Kotto is incredible in it. Like one of the all-time Dennis Farina performances every time. And I mean, every time I'm walking through the main hall of an airport, part of my brain is going, Serrano's got the discs. Serrano's got the discs. Serrano's got the discs.
We would yell at each other like if we were setting up the band somewhere in a big hall, and like Vinny, the bass player, would be in the back of the hall by the desk or whatever. And he'd always say, Serrano's got the discs. That's the big finale. Yeah.
And this is how you can tell George and I are basically the same age.
Is this more on number one or more on number two? That's always the call too. Yeah. Is this more on number one? Put more on number two on.
Oh, you know what I forgot is that, what's his name? I want to say Ashcroft, the actor who plays Marvin, is Taggart from Beverly Hills Cop.
Right. The polar opposite of that character. Yeah. He's like this buttoned down cop. Here he's this junkie bounty hunter asshole guy. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's so great.
Marvin.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
I did a quick Danny Elfman film score Google just so I could have like the full list. Today I learned he did the music for all 3 50 Shades of Grey movies.
What?
Wow.
Yeah. Good for him, man. Get your bag.
There's 3 of those?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, at least one's in production if it isn't out already.
Ugh, yeah.
There was an article going around, I don't know, within the last year about, like the composers that don't write their stuff anymore. They kind of maybe sketch out a few things and then hand it off to their team. And I think it's like Hans Zimmer or people like that.
Oh, makes sense.
To me, so much of the film scoring is the orchestration. And I think that's Steve Bartek and a lot of the Elfman stuff, although I could be wrong about that.
I mean, the Simpsons theme itself he literally just gave that melody and the accompaniment, the basic chordal accompaniment. And that was all Alf Clausen.
Yeah. Yes, who's amazing. Yeah.
Amazing. With the orchestra. Not to take away, but it's like, it's all about the orchestration.
Yeah. They never get credit, like as prominent credit, Like it's there buried in the credits.
Do you know the band Refugee, Brian?
No, I don't.
This one keyboard player, before he joined the band Yes for one album, Patrick Moraz, he had this band called Refugee, and it was a 3-piece keyboard, drums, and bass. And I had never really heard of them, but I always liked Patrick Moraz because he was a really interesting keyboard player. And
no relation to Jason?
No. Yeah, Moraz. He was a Swedish guy, I think.
Okay, got it.
Anyway, brilliant piano player. And he did Relayer, which is one of my favorite Yes records. It's a very different record, the jazziest, sort of most fusion-y record that Yes ever did. They had this band called Rev, and they released one album. And on this album, it's like from 1971, 72, there was this thing called the Grand Canyon Suite. And I swear the Simpsons theme is in.
Really?
And I know Danny Elfman was listening to this stuff, when he was in his probably teens and 20s. I know he had this Refugee album because I'm driving in the car listening to this thing for the first time. And I went like, holy shit, it's the Simpsons theme. Like, oh my, this must have been even subconsciously somewhere in Elfman's thing. I should find the actual tune. And the theme comes back a bunch of times and it's totally the first half of the Simpsons theme, which I'm convinced was just imprinted on Danny Elfman probably as a prog kid.
Did you Google this?
No, I haven't. I should see if anyone else has thought of the same thing. Because it's even the same octave and the same timbre. And it's like, what?
Really? That's awesome. Wow. So homage or coincidence?
Homage or coincidence, right. That's my whole compositional style.
It sounds better than stealing.
Yes.
Yeah. Brian, I got to commend you on the matching between your shirt and your new, is it a Korg?
That is a Nord.
Nord, excuse me.
Nord Red, yes.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
I was actually going to talk about this as one of my peaches because of the tour, which we can talk about in just a second here. I decided it was time to upgrade from my $400 Privia, which, does one sound poorly, to...
I've got a Privia.
It's great. We recorded an album with it, and I was so disappointed in the tone. I used one for years. That was my go-to touring keyboard. And then hearing it on a recording, I was like, it's a bad piano sound. So I was like, you know what? I'm technically a professional musician. I should have a nice piano. And so I this thing ain't cheap, but this is a forever keyboard. So it's just amazing.
I had the same thought 5-6 years ago, I guess it was, where like I bought drums, like my second drum set after having been a professional musician for 20 plus years, where it sort of occurred to me like, I really should buy some drums. Like this is what I do for a living. Because I had an old kit and I recovered it, and always amend and fix and ratchet. And I'm thinking, I'm like a professional musician. I should probably have a drum set that like is, The Privia thing I saw years ago. I was on doing a show and it was the woman that sang with the Grateful Dead. I forget her name, Diane something. She was like on 2 albums with the Grateful Dead and she was doing this little tour and she was like at this festival that we were playing at. And her keyboard player had a Privia that he sawed in half so he could fold it. He took the guts out. He sawed it in half. He had a big ass Home Depot hinge on the top of this thing. And he literally at the end of the gig could just fold it in half and put it in a case. And it was in a suitcase he could carry around. A full 88 key Privia. And he's like, these Privias are great because you can't break them. Like they're so well built.
That's 100% true.
You can literally saw the fucker in half and take it home with you, which is what he did. I thought, oh my God, I love it.
I think I have purchased in my lifetime probably 10 Privias. It's expensive and annoying to fly with them because it's a huge fucking keyboard. So what we would do is before the first show, I would go to a local guitar center, buy a Privia, which is between $500 and $1,000. We would use it for tour. And at the end of that leg, we would all sign it and sell it at the merch booth.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Oh.
And look, it's an expensive item because it's, hundreds to $1,000. We wouldn't do like a big markup for the signatures, but it was like, this will be a cool item for someone to have. And also we make a little money by selling it, but more importantly, we don't have to fucking fly the thing back to LA. So every time we went on tour, I would buy a new Privia and then sell it to someone at the end. At some point I had 2 of them here because one of them, found its way back. I think we donated it to a school or something, but I went through so many of them because they were relatively inexpensive and and like you said, sturdy as hell.
Yeah.
And they play nicely too. My main objection was just the piano sound. I wanted some better sounds. And also this thing, it's honestly terrifying. I will use, if I'm lucky, 5% of its, abilities. There's a lot of knobs on it, but the way these things are organized, parts an organ, parts a piano/electric piano. Then there's a synth, and then there's a bunch of effects. And they all have their own little place they live. George, have you ever played with the organs on these Nords?
Matt has one. Yeah, Matt from the former band has one. And he was showing me some of the drawbar stuff. Yeah, it's insane.
It's so cool.
Yeah, Brian, have you played with that a bunch yet? I was very impressed with that when I was in your garage briefly the other day.
Yeah, I messed around with it. It's also a fun way to teach my kid about like the overtone series. Because I pull up an organ sound and I'm like, okay, here's the fundamental. Boom. All right, let's look at the next one and the next one and the next one. And so I can teach her some music stuff from it too. And also she gets to make ridiculous noises on it because we can, dial it around. So I started to read the owner's manual, which, to quote Beetlejuice, this thing reads like stereo instructions because it basically is. Like, it's very dense. There's a lot of buttons. There's a magic button here, this one. And what that does is it makes every button have a different function because every button secretly has 2 options. So that's a shift button. So just in case you didn't think there were enough fucking buttons on this thing, there's actually twice as many and they all do 2 things. It's insanity, but it is very exciting. And honestly, the really cool thing about this too, not to spend the entire time talking about this machine.
Brought to you by Nord.
Yeah, seriously. Like many modern keyboards, it has a USB thing which you can use as MIDI, but also you can open up the Nord app and load tones on it from the computer.
Ooh.
And samples too. We used to do She Blinded Me With Science, and we couldn't find clean samples of the doctor yelling science. Every sample we found, it was a dirty sample. There was no isolated sample. So I just re-recorded it. I did my version of it. So it's me yelling science, and I just sent him these MP3s and he loaded it up.
It's so easy to use. I'm actually curious, George. So I don't know if you're the same with this. With all the synth stuff.
Yeah.
I have a vague appreciation of what knobs do. And then I fiddle with them until it starts to sound cool.
That's the right approach.
Okay, great.
I'll look at the name, whatever pre-assigned name they give you that is some sort of secret code because they can't actually use the real name. It'll be, Van Halish,
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Or Tom
Open
Sander.
arms.
Right, yeah. Open hands, And then that gives you this idea of like, oh, okay, this is the Tom Sawyer sound, or this is that famous synthy thing.
Right.
I love that thing just has those bass tones. I just love those sub-low saw note kind of like, those like really freaking low.
Are the best.
I love that.
Yeah. The mini Moogs do that really well too. The sub 37. There's a specific lead on that lead slash, which is mostly used as a bass. Like it's just that perfect sawy bass thing.
Dirty low octave, like the stuff the Beasties used all the time for that. Yeah, it's just like so cool.
Oh, I learned about something the other day. I'm curious if you know this, George. So I went to NAMM Global Headquarters in Carlsbad. I think we talked about this on the show, but I want to ask if you have heard of this guy. Don Lewis and the Live Electronic Orchestra. Do you know what this is?
No.
All right, I'm going to text you both a picture. So this is from the Museum of Making Music at NAMM Global Headquarters in Carlsbad, California, which is a very cool museum for kids because they just have a bunch of instruments out that kids can play. Audrey played a harp guitar and a banjo.
Oh, yeah. You did tell me about this guy. Yeah.
So have you guys both gotten this?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is pre-MIDI. This guy, Don Lewis, who's the guy in the background there, sets up this gigantic, look at that apparatus on the right of the picture there.
Love it.
He sets this thing up so he can perform solo, and apparently immediately gets in trouble with the union, who has some sort of rule, which is like, there's not enough musicians. There's too many instruments for one musician. No. And gets kicked out of whatever union because he's set up this solo recording thing.
Wow.
But it is, to me, just the peak of synthesizer nonsense from the 70s. Look at this thing.
That's fantastic.
It's beautiful.
We'll post a picture in the episode. I'd never heard of him or the setup before, but I'm like obsessed with it now.
And it like probably sounded exactly what a $50 Casio sounded like 8 years later.
Exactly.
Like 7 years later, you could go to Toys R Us and you would get the same exact synth sounds coming out of your Fruit Loops synthesizer or whatever it was.
Yeah. For people who can't see it, it's like 7 keyboards in various forms set up, attached to a giant patch board. It's just amazing.
It's pure chaos.
I thought it was Herbie Hancock, but no.
Yeah, I can see that vibe, yeah.
Well, there's a very famous story from the 40s, I think it was. In New York City, there was some issue with the musicians' union. The union in the city still is actually pretty decent, but back then in the 40s and 50s, it was like you had to have X number of musicians on every gig, orchestral things, all the shows. You couldn't have pre-recorded music, Broadway, whatever it was. It was very, very tight. And so some promoters or something knew that there was going to be this strike, this walkout was going to happen. So they found someone who was in the early stages of working on synthesizers. Again, 50s, early synthesizer stuff. And they said, can you put together like 2 minutes of orchestral music, like with, 50, 60 parts to it? And the guy was like, yeah, it's going to take me like 3 months to do this, but I could put something together. So he starts working on this and he gets this like little score and he makes whatever symphony he puts together of, all these synth clarinets and synth oboes and synth strings and whatever. And they go into these union negotiations and the non-union people say, you are all replaceable. We are at that point where you have no leg to stand on.
In the 40s.
In the 40s. You're all replaceable with the technology which is coming out. And they're like, no, we're not. And he said, just the other day, I called, William Smith and send me something over today. And he sent me this and he plays him this tape that, of course, the guy had been working on for months and months and months. And like all the union people are like, fuck, because they're hearing this symphony come out of this. He just wrote this yesterday, whatever it was, And so the whole negotiations were then set up. And I guess the non-union people got the better deal because everyone was afraid of losing their gig because of this fake synthesizer thing that was put together. That was a total bluff on that one guy's part.
Crazy.
But nothing has changed. At every point now, it's always like, use this half of the stage, use this third of the stage, use this corner of the stage. Stay off the stage and do it from home. But you can, okay, you know what? Don't do it from home, but do it from that one room in your house.
Yeah, do it in your bedroom. I'm not paying for any plugins.
Yeah,
right. Do it yourself.
And then we're going to take what you've created and we're going to sell it. And we're going to make the profit off the thing and that'll be fine. So,
yeah. Speaking of that, this is Late Night with Brian Wecht. Over here we have Leighton Gray.
That was beautiful. And the one who spoke was the beautiful Brian Wecht. Mystery guest. Who are you?
Oh, hi, I'm George Hrab from the Geologic Podcast and other sundries. So nice to be
Yes.
here again, even though I'm where I always am, but virtually with you lovelies.
It's awesome to have you back. One of the many reasons I wanted to talk to you again is that you and I are heading out on the road pretty soon. Actually, the day that this comes out, so this comes out on the 16th, and then in the 19th in Cleveland will be the first of a series of shows George and I are doing together. And I'm very excited. Yeah.
I've never been like on a bus on a tour before. I've never done the multiple city thing before. So I'm very excited. I'm anxious, but excited too. And wondering how long before I'm strung out.
Right.
How many hours will it be before I write that song about how hard it is to be a musician? How hard it is to tour on this electric horse that I'm riding cross country. And if only my baby can know how I'm longing for her.
Yes.
But I have to go on
arms.
stage and satisfy these throngs of people. And the weight of this is just, how long will it be before that song is written? By Wednesday, I think I'll be there.
By Wednesday, the first night of the tour. Actually, it's a good idea to have that. Yeah. It's so fun, dude. I'm so excited to have you.
I appreciate the offer, man. It's great.
No, of course. Our band is in such a weird place with this odd journey of going from playing to very, very small audiences to suddenly playing to much, much larger crowds. So we never did like the full drive yourself sprinter kind of tour. You know, we basically leapfrogged over that middle section and went straight from comedy clubs to 20 people to, like 1,000 or so people on a bus. And I don't regret not doing the sprinter stuff because it's really, really hard. You wake up early, you drive for a long, long time, you get to the gig, you're exhausted, and then repeat as many times as possible.
Right.
So the bus thing, we're very, very lucky to be able to do it. And it's fun. It's this camaraderie, it's like this giant RV full of musicians and crew and everything.
Do you have one bus or two? I don't even know what the setup is like.
Yep, one bus, because we'll have about 10-ish people on it total. And the layout of the bus, it really, if you walk in, you'd think it's just an RV. So driver's up front, then there's like a lounge section. Then there are the berths. There are 12, so it's 4 banks of 3. And then there's a lounge in the back, usually.
Shit.
Experiences vary. Sometimes there's an upstairs, which is like, another lounge. Sometimes there's a bed in the back rather than the lounge, although we never get that bus. But yeah, it's a fun experience. My favorite part of it is I'm a terrible sleeper. Terrible. Always have been. Your bunk is pitch black.
Right.
There are no windows there. So you can dial up the AC and it's just this dark little coffin that you're in.
Yeah, climb into your metal coffin, baby.
Yep. Although, I learned early on, probably 5 years ago was our first bus tour, someone told me something that I had not considered as the best piece of advice I'd gotten, which was sleep feet facing the front in case there's a sudden stop.
Yes.
Where I was like, oh yeah, right. I would prefer not to get spinal damage.
Right. Concussed because of a Volvo that's in front of you. Yeah.
That's right. At some point, I think we drive through the Rockies and we did that on past tours and you wake up and you're like at a 45-degree angle and you're like, oh God, I hope everything's okay outside.
I have like a weird, irrational, lifelong fear of being at extreme angles. It's not height. It's like if I am at a steep angle, I panic. I don't know why. And so that sounds straight out of my nightmares.
You mean like in a car or standing?
In a car or standing, or like if you're going up like an angled surface, just the idea that like any slip and you could fall down and you'd just be sliding. I don't know why it but I've had like panic attacks going up like trails or streets that are too steep.
Oh, even like walking, I see.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Do you like stairs?
Stairs are fine. There are many flat surfaces on which you can be along this incline. There's like a street. I think actually it may be one of the steepest streets in Los Angeles, but I used to date a guy who lived at the top of that street, and me trying to be like, haha, I'm totally normal and cool that we're walking to your place right now and I'm not panicking or anything. Yeah. Listeners at home, does anybody else have that? I have so many nightmares about that shit.
There are some like San Francisco level streets here in LA. Not many, but there are a couple in like the Silver Lake kind of area, right? Mm-hmm. It feels like it's a 45-degree angle. It's an insane slope. The kind of thing where you're getting to the top and you can't see over it until you have crested and are going down the other side. I'm not scared by them, but I don't love it.
Yeah. Going to San Francisco is always incredibly stressful for me. So.
Right.
There must be a name for that. There must be some kind of
There's got to be.
Anglophobia or some kind of
Phobia.
something like that. Wow.
I like that a lot. That's a good episode title.
It's never quite as steep as it feels. Like I know
No.
the SGU, we were in Seattle.
Oh, yeah.
And we were walking up this street and Bob, one of the novellas, I can't tell them apart anymore. One of them was just like, God, this must be like, 35 degrees. And I'm like, no, it's probably like 6. And he's like, no. And I happen on the phone, there's a lovely little gradient app thingy.
Yeah.
And it was like a 7-degree slope, but it felt like this wall, especially when it's long, it just feels endless. Whereas if you actually get on a 45 degree, like if you're really on a 45 degree thing,
oh, you're fucked.
that feels just like a wall. Yeah. It's really weird. I mean, from skiing, you always learn that too, where you're standing on top of this hill and you're thinking like, oh my God, this thing is so steep. And it's like, no, it's like 20 degrees.
I tried to ski a few times. There are hills nearby in Jersey. Like I tried to ski a few times and I couldn't get over the, oh my God, it's too fast.
Oh yeah. I grew up, I was a 4. My dad first took me skiing.
Did you really?
So yeah, we always had a week every winter. We'd get a house up in Vermont, all the cousins.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so yeah, even still, you get on some of these runs and it's like, oh my God, but then Dad, he taught me like, hey, take the length of the lift versus the height of the,
right.
So you do these logarithmic things and, cosine and all that stuff. And it was like, that's how you figure out the angle of descent. And I'm like, oh, cool. Nerding out while we're like skiing down these tiny hills in New Jersey and northern Maine and Vermont and stuff. So yeah.
I never went down like a black diamond or anything. What's a blue square? Is that
What's the medium one? Yeah. The green circle is the easiest. And then the blue square is after that.
I think I went down a couple of blue squares, and even those, the only way I could handle it was by going crosswise, in these very long S's. And of course, people are whipping by you, as you're cutting them off.
And then snowboarders, which just ruin the mountain. But that's a 2-planker peeve that you get these snowboarders that just destroy the mountain because they just basically scrape down slowly because they don't know how to do it. Yeah. Those that know how to do it, like real snowboarders, they're super cool and impressive. But when you're first starting, you're kind of just basically on your butt, sort of scraping all the snow off the mountain.
Right, off the mountain. I have a very clear memory of the last time I went skiing where in the middle of the day, I developed some kind of like very high fever and went down a hill and, I mean, like out of a cartoon, skied straight into a pole at the bottom of the mountain. And then, like the 2 parallel lines, the skis right into the pole, and the ski stopped, but my body didn't. And so I just went flump right into the pole. And clearly I was like sick or whatever. At that point, I was like, you know what? I think I'm kind of done.
How old were you at this point?
I mean, that was probably like 16, 17, something like that. So I was not a teeny child.
Major blow to the ego type age.
Oh, yeah. But believe me, no one was like, watching me, what's the word, shred or whatever. Like I wasn't doing moves. I was eventually getting down to the bottom of the hill.
You were fulfilling a certain expectation by getting injured in that way.
I achieved the goal of skiing, which is to go from the top to the bottom. That is as strong a statement as I'm willing to make about my skiing ability.
Just say it was a Looney Tunes tribute and then you're fine.
Yeah. Oh, actually, speaking of that, we just started watching the Looney Tunes with Audrey. Like, they're all on HBO Max.
Yes.
Really?
Oh, my God.
There's some new ones, too, that are actually really good.
Yes. The new ones are really good. I grew up watching these things. Like, they're on Saturday morning TV, the Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck Hour or whatever. And you're a kid. You're like, okay, that's funny. And then you grow up and you're like, well, actually, every single thing about these is a triumph. Like, the art is incredible. The music is amazing. The voices. Watching them now as an adult, I am just like jaw on the floor the entire time at how great they are.
The voice performances, Mel Blanc, who does about 90% of the voices, is just astounding how good he is, how the characterization that he produces. The characters are great. The writing's great. To me, what I'm always astounded by is when you watch like a Chuck Jones. Chuck Jones and Fritz Lang were the two directors.
Chuck Jones and Fritz Lang, yeah.
You watch the direction that these guys are doing and where they place the camera, which is a virtual camera. They're not finding these shots. They're not going on set and, let's put the camera under the table or in the tree or behind. Like, they're creating this out of whole cloth. And it's an entire universe they've made in these, just gorgeous shots. whether it's a kitchen or, a vista where the coyote is running across or whatever. It's never just this Hanna-Barbera flat. And there's hundreds of these things that they were making every 4 months or whatever that crazy process was that they were doing it.
Yeah, a season has like 30 of them, and there's 30-something seasons.
Yeah.
And you look at this, and it's like, this gorgeous full color kind of abstract art thing, and it's from like 1941.
Yeah.
I am just blown away. And my 8-year-old thinks they're the funniest things ever.
That's great.
So they still hold up for kids today. Okay, maybe she doesn't recognize Edward G. Robinson.
Right. But that's okay.
But it doesn't matter. I didn't recognize half those celebrities and still don't, when I was a kid in the 80s, because they're all from like the 40s and 50s.
Yeah, well, I loved finding those people later. You would see a film with Edward G. Robinson, you'd be like, oh, that's the guy in the restaurant.
That's the guy.
Although that's what Bugs is doing. Okay. I always loved that. And that shows the quality, too, that it could still be funny without having to know what the reference is.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's what's so brilliant about that writing. I mean, that was like why Monty Python was so great, too. Like, I didn't know any of the, not that there's that many, but any of the English references, like, you didn't know what they were.
Reginald Maudling.
Yeah, Reginald Maudling. Who the fuck is Reginald Maudling? But it doesn't matter.
I still don't know.
Yeah, because we're looking at his underwear, and that's like the funny bit. Reginald Maudling's pants. Okay, that's funny. Yeah, just even, these A cars. There's a episode with the gremlins on the plane. Gremlins, little men, But he says something about A cars, and you're like, well, and it was during the war, they had to ration gas, and A vehicles only got a certain amount of gas because whatever. So that meant that they were breaking down and running out of fuel more often, which 20 years later, you learn all this stuff. You're like, oh, that's the punchline. How great is that?
Yeah.
But you still loved it as a kid because it's Bugs Bunny and who cares?
Yes.
Watching Simpsons very young and then becoming an adult with any amount of media awareness and being like, oh, Citizen Kane, got it, gotcha.
Perfect example.
Yeah. I had that experience with PDQ Bach.
Oh, yeah.
So, Leighton, do you have any idea what PDQ Bach is?
No, at all. No.
All right. So PDQ Bach is the, I guess, originally side project, but then eventually main project of this guy, Peter Sheckley, who's a composer, a very talented composer. And he had this shtick where he was discovering works by the long lost cousin, relative, I don't remember.
No, it was a bastard son. It was like the 12th
son.
Bastard son of Johann Sebastian Bach. It was PDQ Bach.
Bach had a son. He had CPE. There was the other JS Bach. Like, there are people in the Bach extended family. And so PDQ was basically a vehicle for classical music and other jokes that would, every year around Christmas, Carnegie Hall, they do a PDQ Bach show. And our mutual mentor and friend, Barry Santani, was the first person to introduce me to PDQ Bach and say, I think you would like this. So for context, Barry Santani was our high school band conductor and a really accomplished musician and wonderful guy. And he was like, you know what? I think you should go check this out at Carnegie Hall. And just blew me away. It's very broad humor for much of it, but also very specific classical music jokes, pulling in themes from the Western canon, right? And then I heard almost all of this. By the way, exactly the same thing happened to me with Weird Al, where I would hear Smoke on the Water and the Polka, and then realize that it's a Deep Purple song, So all this stuff in PDQ Bach, and then studying music later in college, I'd be like, whoa, that's a Schumann thing? What the fuck? Yeah. There's one PDQ Bach piece where it's all centered around one of these Schoenberg 5 pieces for orchestra. And I completely did not pick up on it the first time. It's literally the Schoenberg piece with like other shit going on. And then hear that later. And I'm like, wait, why does that sound so familiar? Oh yeah, I know the joke version of it, where there's like an auga horn happening, and a bunch of other, bicycle bells and stuff.
Eine kleine Nicht music versus eine kleine Nacht music, He has a wonderful thing where they do Beethoven's Fifth, but there's like baseball announcers.
Yes, that's a really good bit.
They're doing this play-by-play of Beethoven's Fifth. Like, clarinets are coming in. Clarinet Steve Smith, he was from Chicago. He's come in, and he was a good trade this year. And then the French horn makes a mistake.
The French horn with the early entrance.
I can't believe, did you just hear that? Oh my God, that's like echoes back to the 5th season. And it's so funny. Because again, it's this combination of very broad, silly sounds, bassoons farting and all that kind of stuff, and then incredibly specific jokes. When he did Einstein on the Fritz, which was his Philip Glass thing. Instead of Einstein on the Beach, Einstein on the Fritz. And it's excerpts from a 4-hour opera where Einstein decides to pull a handkerchief out of a box and blow his nose and put it back. It's a 4-hour opera. Just that's what happens in the entire opera. The 1712 overture.
Yeah, with the balloons.
He pops balloons. So the theme is bam 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 bam. So it's Pop Goes the Weasel with the 1812 com. But then he orchestrates everything brilliantly, and
it's so well done and it's so funny. Like, obviously, the more you know, the better it gets. But it also completely worked for me as a high schooler, not understanding 99% of the references and just doing comedy in Carnegie Hall with that type of ensemble really felt kind of punk rock, honestly. Like, how did he get away with doing this? Did you ever see the one, I think it was a recurring bit. He's got, I forget if Shickley's playing or whoever. It's some kind of piano solo and he's just shredding. And then they have a cop on a motorcycle pull off. Right. Sir, do you have any idea how fast you were playing?
That's right.
In the middle of Carnegie Hall, very broad, but very, very funny.
Yeah. Well, the story of Matt, his son.
Yeah.
So he has a son, Matt Shickley. Matt had a podcast years ago. This guy got in touch with me years ago. Can I interview you? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I saw that his name was Shickley. And I'm like, I'm not going to ask him because he's obviously not related. And we kind of became friends or whatever. He got involved with Nexus, where he and Hai Ting, his partner, would do stuff.
So Matt is a composer and Hai Ting is an opera singer.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
And I probably know them for 3 or 4 years. We're at Nexus, I think. And someone else says to me, like, well, you ever heard Matt's dad's stuff? And I'm like, what? Like, that's Shickley? And I look at Matt, I'm like, you're his son? Are you kidding? I had played it down and just had forgotten about it even. And then, and he's just cool as ever. He's just another talented, crazy musician.
I did the exact opposite because I'm not as cool as you are, which is the moment I met Matthew Shickley, I was like, oh my God, is your dad Peter Shickley? Yeah. Right out of the gate, because I've been such a fan for so long. And of course, Matt is an amazing composer and super cool, funny guy.
I think one of the most nervous performances I ever did, talk about being nervous for something where you're alive because you can feel your heart, doing this, was at a Nexus. He wrote a micro opera for me and Hai Ting. Now, Hai Ting is an opera singer, legit opera singer.
I mean, incredible.
He wrote a piece for her, which was the ingredients of a Twinkie, as a little sonetta kind of, and she did that on some TV show, destroyed. But she's amazing. So he writes this thing. He's like, if I wrote this little mini opera for you and Hai Ting, would you be into it? I'm like, yeah, you've heard me sing, right? He's like, oh, that'll be great. So he writes this thing and we have a rehearsal. Yeah, I was terrified. It's like a love story between two people, but they're two non-skeptics kind of falling in love. So it's every logical fallacy that you can have sort of in the lyrics of this thing. And it's just very cute. But I shit myself because I'm about to, I'm about to walk on stage with an opera singer singing a Shickley piece. What are you thinking? It went fine, but
you were great.
It's very nice. But yeah, sometimes go for it. And if hopefully the people are cool, it'll turn out okay. So
right. And no one's cooler than those two.
Seriously.
We got to talk about this too, because it's in your screen name. We got to talk about Stan Freberg.
Oh my gosh.
So Leighton, do you know Stan Freberg?
Yeah, poor Leighton. It's just all this, all this Gen X horse shit. And it's not even Gen X. It's like the 1940s through the Gen X filter.
It's boomer shit.
I'm happy to be along for the ride.
You're very kind. Yeah. But anyway, Stan Freberg is amazing.
Yeah. George and I just discovered, 2 weeks ago or something, that we're both huge Stan Freberg fans. So Stan Freberg was a musical comedian, parodist, ad man, from the active in the 50s onward. I mean, heyday really the 60s.
He was the first guy to put humor in commercials.
Yeah. Oh.
Because especially on television and on 50s radio, you never used irony or humor in your advertising because that would detract from the product. And Stan was the first guy to be like, no, make the consumer laugh and they'll remember the product. Even if they don't remember the product, they'll remember the commercial, which then will lead them back. So he was the first guy to really put humor and do confusing things. He wrote this 7-minute musical for a coffee company.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, like Omaha brand coffee or something.
Yeah, these are these industrial musical. Yeah.
Yeah, sort of the start of that whole industrial musical thing. But they said, can you write us a 30-second radio commercial? And he's like, sure. And he comes back, he's like, I wrote a 9-minute musical. Like, take radio ads out and just we'll run it and it'll be great. Butternut coffee. That's what it was. Yeah, for butternut coffee.
Wow.
Weird Al grew up listening to Stan.
That's right. He was a major Weird Al influence. And in fact, Stan Freberg on the Weird Al show, when he did a Saturday morning show, Stan Freberg played a character on that show. I mean, really one of the modern comedy music.
He inherited the Jack Benny radio show. So Jack Benny, who was a big sort of movie star radio performer, he went to television in 1954-55 from CBS radio to CBS television. So his radio slot was open. They gave it to Stan Freberg. Stan Freberg got that Sunday night slot or whatever it was, #1 slot on radio. But Stan refused to have cigarette ads on his show in 1955. He's like, These are cancer sticks. I'm not doing commercials. I'll sponsor the show myself if I have to. And they couldn't find a sponsor. So there's only 13 of these radio shows ever happened because Stan was like, I'm not taking the Pall Mall ads. I'm not taking the Camel cigarettes in 1955. So it's like, dude, This guy was so ahead of the curve.
Back in the tobacco's good for your T-zone, kind of era of cigarette ads, right?
As a doctor, I can recommend Pall Mall because they're the smoothest of all cigarettes.
Yes, and I'm a doctor because I'm wearing a white coat.
Yeah, for my pregnant patients, I recommend Pall Mall cigarettes.
Lights, yeah. The level of musicianship is astronomical, as is the voice work. He's also surrounding himself with these like June Foray level superstars of voice work in the 50s and 60s. But it's stuff that, again, I played it for Audrey. He did a bunch of parodies of popular songs in the 50s. He has a Heartbreak Hotel, the Banana Boat song, Great Pretender, Yellow Rose of Texas, like the Mitch Miller kind of, or was that who did it? Mitch Miller?
I think so, yeah.
I can't remember. One of those guys.
His Heartbreak Hotel is great because he's doing Elvis, but his pants are so tight that they rip during the song because he's shaking his hair so much. And again, this is the 50s. So like to have the implied thing of like someone's pants being torn, that was like super edgy. But he's like, oh, I ripped my jeans. Third pair today. And Audrey, she knows Harry Belafonte. We play Harry Belafonte all the time. She knew the Banana Boat song. So he has this recurring like beatnik character, hey man, he's one of these guys. Like, I can't dig that, man. That kind of voice, who is not into the whatever bullshit is going on with pop music in the day. Like he doesn't want to play the same piano chords over and over. He's mad at the pling, pling, pling jazz. And in the Banana Boat song, like this character has very sensitive ears and he doesn't like the shouting, the day-o kind of shouting that's going on. And Audrey thinks this is the funniest fucking thing. Like she asks for it all the time. Can we hear it again? She doesn't even want to hear the Belafonte anymore. She wants to hear the Stan Freberg version because it's so funny. Too piercing, man. Too piercing.
Yeah. It holds up so well.
Even though it's of its time so much, there is still this timelessness because the writing is so good.
Yeah.
Do you know he's the voice of Pete Puma on Warner Brothers?
Oh, I didn't know that. No, I didn't know that.
How many lumps you want? Oh, a whole lot of lumps. That's Stan Freberg. And he's like 19 or something.
That's crazy.
Because he just walked into Warner Brothers. Was like, do you need a voice artist?
Wow.
He's one of the Chipmunks too.
Oh, really?
It's not Chip and Dale, but whatever the Warner Brothers version of the two little... Oh, yes. Oh, good. Oh, thank you. Oh, very much. Oh, very well. Oh, nice for you. Oh, thank you so much. He's one of them too.
Yeah. Is he really? I didn't know that.
So he just sneaks up into these places. But
that's amazing.
Damn.
Talking about Barry Santani, he played United States of America for me, which is Stan's musical, basically, of the history of the U.S.
Magnum opus.
The hardest I've ever laughed is Yankee Doodle Go Home. It's a scene where there's the famous painting of the two drummers playing drums or marching, and there's the fife player, and there's the guy with the torn flag during the Revolutionary War. It's a famous painting. And it's that scene. One of the drummers is the jazz drummer, though.
He's that character.
He can't stand how square the fife player is. He's just like, he wants it to go, da-da-da-da-da-da, and it should go, scoopy-doopy-doopy-doo, boo-boo-boo-ba-da-oops-a-oo, chicka-boo.
Yeah, chicka-boo.
So they agree. Okay, we'll do 4 bars your ways, 4 bars Doodles. All right. Yeah, and he starts, Yankee Doodle went to town. And then this big band comes in. And you hear the people marching. So there's like this army is marching behind them and you hear the drums doing and the fife players playing.
The Foley on this stuff is bananas good.
And this full 16-piece big band, they're blowing. I'm in Barry's car because he's playing me this cassette. I am crying with laughter because it was so unexpected, And I thought, okay, I am a convert. Like, this is my Jesus now. I'm going to get every piece of Stan Freberg I possibly can. And I did. The box sets and the book.
Barry also introduced me to the United States of America, Volume 1. I had known about Stan Freberg before that because Dr. Demento had these compilations, which were the greatest novelty hits of the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and I think 80s too.
Right.
And either the 50s or 60s one, I can't remember, probably 50s, they did the John and Marcia thing. Oh, yeah. It's an early Freberg big hit. It's just two people going, John, Marcia, John,
like
Marcia.
3 minutes of every variation of someone's name that you could possibly say. It's a whole story.
Yeah. Huge hit. And it was on this, greatest novelty hits of the 50s. And that's how I found out about him. I think he had another one. He had a Christmas novelty compilation where they had his Green Christmas on it, which is a very shockingly biting satire from the 60s about how Christmas is becoming too commercial. In the 60s. And everything they say, you're like could be said exactly today. And you're like, oh, and it's also a billion times worse now than it was, 60 years ago.
We were thinking our ad should just say, Merry Christmas, peace to all. Isn't that a little old hat? Well, what are you thinking? Well, we're thinking of, Santa Claus with the big biceps and smoking one of our Pall Malls. I think it's 61 or 62. And he's basically saying, shouldn't the holidays be about just family and love and
loving everyone on earth?
But it's this 6-minute little mini musical. And it's just so good.
Yeah, the United States of America, still incredible songwriting, the Billy May arrangements.
Billy May.
The big band arranger who just top-notch arranger and players in this band. I couldn't tell you who played in the band.
It's the Columbia Cats. It's the same guys that played on all the Columbia Sinatra records.
Oh, it is? I didn't realize that.
That's why it sounds so hugely awesome sounding.
I bet they recorded it at the Capitol Studios.
Yeah,
here.
He did all the stuff at Capitol. Yeah. When he went to remaster it, I guess he re-released it in 96. They went to Capitol and they found that one lost sketch of Ben Franklin and Discovering Electricity. They forgot they had this extra sketch. They put it on the re-release.
You know what? I don't think I realized I was missing because that's the first time I think I heard it because they put it on the re-release, which would have been about the first time I listened to it.
Hey, Mr. Franklin, how you like those glasses I made for you? Yeah, sure.
They did a volume 2 and it just wasn't quite as good.
There's moments on it that are okay. But I remember being so excited when I bought it. I'm like, oh, okay. It starts kind of cool. And then Tyne Daly sings on it. And I like her number. The Shoot If You Must. I like that one.
I don't even remember it, honestly.
There's a great mistake in Shoot If You Must. The timpani player totally comes in 8 bars early and plays this big doom, doom, doom. And they kept it in because they must have liked the take. Because Freberg was very big on the whole band and the singers perform the number. We don't do stuff separate. You can find these recordings of them doing commercials where the full band is playing and they have to hit the 60-second or the 30-second post and they don't. They redo it again and redo it again. So he was really big on the singers sing live with the musicians. We do it in one take and that's what the take needs to be, whether it takes 50 takes or whatever. So they must have done this one. They must have liked Tyne Daly's performance and they just left in. You hear this timpani, and it's so wrong.
I don't remember that.
And then 4 bars later, it comes in where you're supposed to play.
All right. Now, Leighton, you can talk for an hour about stuff you like.
Yeah. You talk about Stan Freberg.
All right. Well, actually, because of that, I think we should move on to segments. And Leighton, you can go first for our first segment. This is our pop culture recommendation segment. You can talk about a book, movie, video game, anything you've been enjoying. This segment is called What's Poppin'. The theme song goes here in post.
What's poppin'?
What's poppin'? Now, Leighton, what's poppin'?
What's poppin' for me, and I wish that I had a poppin' that would involve me going off for 30 minutes about something literally nobody cares about but me. I am probably going for one that's closer to y'all's interests, but I really enjoyed J.G. Ballard, and I realized I'd never actually finished the Atrocity exhibition, which I still haven't finished, but I'm actually committed to reading it again, and it's fucking great.
Is that a short story collection?
Yeah, very, very loose short story collection. In particular, I'll highlight for folks who want to check it out the short story Why I Want to Fuck Ronald Reagan, which is written as like a study paper that's like talking about these gruesome like sexual interest experiments of like, it's very Ballard.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear up this ass.
It's really delightful. And the story of that one is that the store that like published it got sued for obscenity, which the defense like went to J.G. Ballard and was like, hey, is there anything that you can say about this to help us out with this? And he was like, no, it's supposed to be, it's obscene. I wanted it to be obscene. And they're like, all right, so you're going to be the prosecution's star witness. And then somebody made copies of it and took it to like the RNC and gave it out. And like, apparently nobody batted an eye because they were like, oh yeah, this seems like normal opposition research.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I love Ballard's stuff and I want to read more of his novels. But yeah, good shit. And again, if people haven't read Crash is the best.
I haven't read Crash. I did read High Rise fairly recently, and that was solid and worth reading.
What happens in Crash?
Well, people are horny for car crashes.
That's what the movie is based on.
Yeah. The Cronenberg movie is based on
I
that.
see. Okay. Yes, gotcha.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best book to movie adaptations of all time in terms of faithfulness. Cronenberg gets it, and I can't think of a better combination. And also the Criterion Collection cover for it was painted by Phil Hale, who is one of my favorite painters, who also, I guess, separate from this, like does these incredible, like weird car crash sex paintings where it's like just fragments of a human body, like that just kind of disappear into the darkness. It's really cool.
Now, is that a thing? Is that a real thing?
Oh, the people having like car crash finish? Sure, why not?
But I mean, like previous to the movie and the book.
That's the question, right? Yeah. Was that a thing?
I feel like it's impossible that there weren't, you know?
Okay.
From time immemorial, if it exists, I think people are horny about it.
Okay. Sometimes an artist will, out of whole cloth, invent this thing that is like, oh yeah, this exists. And it doesn't, but it's for the purpose of whatever story they're telling. So like, I remember thinking at the time, is that a thing? Like, is that a crash fetish? Or is that something that's just sort of invented? I don't doubt it, because what isn't a fetish? Right. And then especially after a film comes out or a book comes out, then people will get into it and then claim that it's a thing. Whatever. So, okay.
Well, and then a movie comes out later with the exact same name that's really bad. And then that one wins the Academy Award. And then you can't watch the first movie anywhere on streaming because it is essentially a 90-minute long sex scene.
Right.
But it's like my favorite Cronenberg movie. Is it? Maybe it is. I don't know. So yeah, that is what is poppin' for me.
Cool.
Great. George?
It's a television recommendation. It's a fun little distraction of a show. It's about 4 episodes in so far. It's called Welcome to Wrexham.
Oh, is that good?
I'm enjoying it. It's Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. Is that McElhenney?
Yeah.
From It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And Ryan Reynolds, of course, from everything else. The two of them decided to buy a British football team, or Welsh.
In real life.
For some reason, Rob McElhenney just loved this little town of Wrexham. It reminded him of kind of the outskirts of Philadelphia. It's like a working man's town. And they have this football team, this soccer team that's there. The football team used to be big like in the 60s and 70s, I guess. And the way the Football League is set up in the UK is if you do poorly, you get demoted out of the league. So it's like there's like 5 leagues. So they were sort of saying, like, imagine if the Yankees like really had a number of bad seasons, they would be demoted to playing AAA ball, and then they'd be demoted to playing like, beer softball eventually, It's this promotion relegation. Yeah. So whoever's at the top of each league gets to move up. And then, of course, the Premier League is the main one, and they make the multi-millions of dollars, whatever. And so this Wrexham team over the years has just dropped further and further down. And they're in the oldest stadium, like consistently run stadium in the world or something like that, or soccer stadium, something like that. It's like 170 years old or something crazy like that. Anyway, they bought this team and they're trying to get them into the next league. And it's the story of these 2 American guys who don't really quite know what they're doing or what the connection is, but it's legit. It's very sweet because they are so interested in not just helping the team, but helping the town, because the town has such pride in the team.
It's a documentary.
Yeah. I think they bought it in 2020, so it's all obviously happened. But what I love is that this woman became the COO, They've got all these offers from all these men, of course. So they found this one woman who has been successful with these other teams. They found a coordinator for accessibility for the stadium, which I thought was like really cool.
Feels like real life Ted Lasso.
Exactly. Yeah, it's very sweet. I was going to watch one because they're each like 28 minutes long or whatever it is. And I ended up watching like 4 in a row. I thought, oh, this is really fun.
Huh.
Welcome to Wrexham.
Awesome.
Brian, what's poppin'?
Yes. Okay. People who listen to this show know I'm always up for some smooth jazz bullshit. And I found a legitimately great new album. I can't believe I didn't know this one before. It's Bob James and David Sanborn from 1986, Double Vision. Do you know this album, George?
No, I do not.
It's incredible. I mean, I'm a huge Bob James fan. Bob James, keyboardist, band leader, does a lot of like jazz fusion stuff, endlessly sampled on Run DMC, like everything. And so he has this album co-released, under his name and David Sanborn, a sax player. And it's just like one of these perfect kind of smooth jazz, but good smooth jazz, which is a bit of an oxymoron, but not really. Albums from the 80s, the production, it's exactly what you expect. Sparkly is the only word for it. Usual murderer's row of players. You've got Bob James on keyboards, David Sanborn on sax, Steve Gadd, of course, is on drums because it's an album from the 70s or 80s.
Right.
And Al Jarreau shows up for one vocal track where he's in, this is like prime time Al Jarreau.
Wow. Moonlighting Al Jarreau.
Marcus Miller's on bass. Yes, moonlighting era Al Jarreau. It's so good.
Wow.
It is, as our friend Commander Meouch from Twerp would say, it is very adult. It is a very adult album. There's that like David Sanborn kind of Michael Brecker sax sound where it's just like really big and in your face. It feels like he's playing from the top of an arena. It's so much fun. A lot of them were written by Marcus Miller, but there's one standard they do, You Don't Know Me. Do put my hand in mine, do, which is also great. So I just, love Bob James albums.
Wow.
I listened to it like 6 times the last 3 days. It's really fun.
I had a suit altered by David Sanborn's tailor.
Did you really?
She literally had a shop 4 blocks up the road here. It's called So On and So Forth.
Really?
Oh my God.
Get it?
Yeah.
I just randomly walked in and I was like, do you tailor men's suits? And she's like, sure. And so we start chatting and she's like, are you a musician? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, yeah, I thought I could sort of tell by your vibe, your style. I'm like, geez, it's that obvious? Okay, thanks. And she's like, do you know David Sanborn? I'm like, yeah, of course. She's like, well, I'm his tailor. She like would drive into the city and apparently he had, I don't know if he has some kind of muscular dystrophy or some kind of a something.
Oh, really?
So his one shoulder is significantly like smaller than his other. And she was saying she had to pad the suits out to like compensate. And like that became her thing. It was like her bag that he knew he could go to her with any kind of suit he would bring her, any blazer, and she would make it look quote unquote normal or whatever,
Yeah.
And like once you sort of know that, you sort of start to see that like, oh yeah, that one shoulder's a little bit weird. It was some kind of bone disease he had as a kid or something like that was involved. So yeah, I know David Sanborn. That's as close as I got to David Sanborn.
That's wild. Celebrity horn players, what an incredible genre of human being. There's like the Kenny G's, which is a whole different level.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about like Chuck Mangione, Michael Brecker, this level of person, someone who's not just, who did crossover appeal.
What's interesting is I think that's kind of gone. There's no current instrumental.
I can't think of anybody. They're YouTubers who are doing, who are pretty well known,
but
right?
You'll never have that Chuck Mangione, like a #1 hit instrumental.
That's right.
Like Kenny G's the last guy to do it, really.
Probably, yeah. And there are all these guys that came out of funk, like your Maceo Parkers or Fred Wesley or the JB, like extended universe people who were, I don't think quite had they had some crossover. Fred Wesley had hits for sure.
Yeah, but not like a Kenny G, not like a multi-million.
Not like a Kenny G, yeah.
You tweeted about the tour and you said it was going to be this and smooth jazz and whatever. And that one guy.
I saw this.
So this one guy chimes in like, I've heard smooth applied to all kinds of jazz.
He said it was like redundant. Why are you saying smooth jazz? Isn't all jazz smooth or something like that?
Yeah, he got there
right?
eventually, but it was kind of like, what other descriptors can be used for jazz? And so me, like an idiot trying to help, I added, well, there's acid jazz and there's sample jazz and big band jazz. And I list all the kinds of jazzes that there are.
In a very even keel,
Yeah, just
educate here.
There's tons. Oh my God, there's a whole universe for you to find, like check it out. And he's like, no, but smooth. Like smooth is the only one that's applied to all of these styles. So I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, no, smooth is a style. And he's like, no, smooth isn't a style.
He thought it's just an adjective.
He thought it's just an adjective. Like, yes, it is an adjective, but it's also a style. And I'm like, there's a very specific type of sound and structure that is associated with. And like, it took like 6 responses before he finally realized, like, oh, it's a style. Oh, yeah. Like the same way that acid jazz or hard jazz or
jazz funk.
Has specific genre things, whether it's timbre or chordal movement or and he finally was like, oh, I didn't realize this style. Thanks. And I was like, oh, check out the Kenny G movie, which actually is quite excellent. This documentary about Kenny G. It doesn't pull any punches. It's really good if you want to learn about what the fuck smooth jazz is, because it's a thing. It's not just an adjective.
Also, not a new thing. I mean, It's existed since the late 70s, early 80s. I watched that conversation kind of as it was happening, and I was like, you know what? I'm just not getting involved. I almost texted you. Can you believe this guy?
I was proud of myself that I never got to that. Listen, asshole. This is what. Yeah, I never got there.
You had a very smooth jazz attitude about it.
Yeah, very pentatonic.
Yeah.
All right. Final segment time. This one's called Peaches and Lemons, where we each say 3 good things and 1 thing that is a little annoying. And the theme song goes right here.
Peaches and lemons. Peaches and lemons.
Excellent. That was the theme song. We're each going to start with a lemon, which is a thing that is a minor bummer, annoyance, peeve, whatever. I'll start. It's fucking hot out.
It's too hot.
It's so hot. It's so goddamn hot.
Let's check. Is it 100 yet today? No, it's only 97.
Oh, good. Well, the sun goes down and you're like, oh, thank God. And then it's still boiling hot in the middle of the night.
That's the worst.
I'm sweaty. I'm gross. I'm constantly dehydrated no matter how much I chug water. And I have fucking Billy Joel's Pressure stuck in my head. And I don't know why. And it's really driving me nuts. Not a Billy Joel fan, but that synth in that song fucking slaps. And so it's just that going in my head as I'm feeling the rivulets of sweat travel down my back. So that's my lemon.
I keep meaning to tell you, Layden, we should try this because I'm doing this right now. These SM7s only pick up very close. So you can have your AC on probably, and it won't.
Oh, I have my AC on.
Okay, you do. Okay, great.
I have a fan. I have another fan. I have my AC on. Scalp wet.
I realized for a while I was turning off the AC when we were recording. And then I was like, wait a minute. I know what the fucking pickup pattern on this mic is.
Yeah.
And I just turned it on and Mike doesn't even hear it. Like, it's perfect.
Yeah. It will pick up my dog barking in the background perfectly, though, as God intended. Yes. She is trying so hard to get out of my lap. And it's like, if I let you out, you're going to start barking at me because you're not getting any more treats. So,
yeah.
All right, weirdo.
It's something about LA where you get to like late June, you're like, oh, summer isn't so bad this year. Okay. It's like, it's really not so bad. It's like, just 70s, 80s. But then fucking September hits and it stays brutal, sometimes through the end of October.
Wow.
Well, and then you get to Thanksgiving and you're like, oh, it's nice out. It's a cool 85.
Yes. This is my 7th year living in LA. It is always hotter at this time of year than I expect because in my mind, it is fall now. It should be 60-something degrees out. Mm-hmm. It's going to be consistently over 80 for the next 2 months. It has always been that way since I've lived here. And yet it still comes as a shock to me every year. Yes. When does snow start by you, George? Because you're in...
I mean, you get little hints of it in November. I love a good monster snowstorm.
Oh, yeah, same.
We would get like 2 of those a year or so. I'm looking forward to the cold. We had upper 95 and hotter days, which we don't normally have for like a week or 2. That whole thing of like 96 at night.
Yeah, awful.
That's what makes it the worst. Like during Music Fest, which is this big festival we had here in Bethlehem, the first couple days, you're walking around outside at 9 o'clock and it's 94 degrees. And you're thinking like, well, what?
Yeah.
How is this a thing?
And it's humid by you too, I
Yeah.
would imagine.
My AC survived the summer, which I can't believe
Good.
it did. So
Wow. I'm surprised. We'll see. I love a cold shower. They're the best, especially in the summer. But you know it's bad when you crank it all the way to cold and it's still hot, like just ambiently hot water.
Yes. Uh-huh.
I'm just like sitting there waiting for it to switch over to ice cold. And it's like, no, it's not. It's not hot. Oh, God.
I can go next with
do
my
it.
lemon. Just real quick, we leave tomorrow for tour. And so today is just, I'm going to be away for a month chaos. It has nothing to do with being on tour. It has everything to do with being away from home. And there's just like 1,000 things to check off the list. I mean, good problem to have. Like, I'm excited to go on tour and everything. But still, it's like, wait, what do I have to fucking do today? Oh, which cables do I need to pack? You know, I realized I needed a longer cable for something. That's hopefully going to get delivered today. All these things can be dealt with on the road, but it's just like running around like crazy today.
kudos for recording today, man. If I was a day away
Yeah.
from a month tour, there's no way I'd be talking to anybody on the internet. You kidding?
Thanks. No, it's nice. You know, we were able to do a bunch of recordings ahead of time and kind of lock down all the podcast stuff. But this is the longest I've been away in, 3 years,
Wow,
maybe
yeah.
even longer. And it is certainly the longest I've been away since we started this podcast. So we've never had to
Oh, yeah.
bank episodes in quite the same way we've done.
It honestly worked out really well. I was nervous about
Yes.
this period coming up, but you leaving and us having a bunch of episodes banked perfectly corresponds with me having a big fat deadline. So
Yeah. George.
So I live over a bar. It's under me-ish, which when I moved into this place 29 years ago, wasn't nearly the bar it's become. And especially after COVID started, they started having seating outside, which I was like, hey, I get it. Okay, cool. I'm glad the bar owner could have business. So now there's like a bar literally under my living room that just has people there like kind of all the time, which again, I get whatever you can do to keep your business. I'm all for, and that's fine.
Yep.
So what this leads to is I'm half a story up over the bar. So I can kind of hang out there and listen. And this provides a very fantastic anthropological opportunity to listen to people that are at a bar, especially the regulars that are kind of there.
Oh, yeah.
That I can't conceive. There's about a dozen people. They rotate in and out. It's like 7 of the dozen are there from like 3 o'clock to 11 o'clock, like every day, like 6 days a week.
Wow.
Yeah, it's astonishing.
How?
Exactly. There are moments where I can put on my pith helmet, my virtual pith helmet, and just go listen to what they're talking about. Because what do you talk about for 6 days a week, 9 hours a day? And it's nothing. They talk about nothing for endless amounts of time. And it's fascinating to have that much time go by without any actual content. The thing that really surprises me and bothers me, though, is that whenever there is some kind of loud sound, whether it's a fire engine driving by, whether it's a motorcycle revving its engine, whether it's a garbage truck dumping a thing, there is a commensurate whoop which follows the loud sound. It matters not the context of the sound. Could be gunfire, could be fireworks being set off, could literally be across the street where someone's picking up the recycling. But you'll get the initial sound, and then 2 of the 6, or maybe 3 of the 6 or 7 of the regular rotation will have to just, in some kind of like congratulatory or just some kind of tribal way, acknowledge the sound by making their own sound. And it, without fail, happens. So police, woo, 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 yeah! Or, yeah!
Oh my God.
Or, yeah! And without fail, it bugs the living shit out of me. Because it's like the dull noise, the hum, you kind of, all right, fine, you can ignore. But the whoop, I just don't get it.
Well, it sounds like they have nothing to actually talk about.
I
They
guess.
have to, really cling on to
Is it this thing of like, we need to acknowledge what's just occurred and that's how we do it?
It sounds like it's the only interesting thing that happens to them while they're there.
Interesting, yeah.
Right. And this is the event. So they're like, oh, yeah, hell yeah. Someone out there has achieved something.
Totally.
So we're going to cheer them on.
Totally. During the festival, which again happens here in Bethlehem, this is right on the street. So there's the sidewalk and the streets right there. Someone made a cardboard sign that said honk for anal. Okay. Which was funny. There was a moment I was like, okay, that's funny. Cars drive by, honk, woo! Cars drive by, honk, woo! This went on from 3:25 till 11:15.
Awesome.
So was it just like nonstop?
Stop! And it never got any less funny for the people that were there because it would be honk for anal, no, boo, honk, woo, no, boo, for 9 hours.
Oh my God.
And the part of me is just amazed that that's the level of sort of stimulus that gets that response. And you go like, oh, that's why we're in the situation we are with our government. Oh, I get it.
Have you seen these people? Do you know what they look like?
Yeah, they're the ones that are there. They know me. Hey, George. Hey. And I'm super friendly. And occasionally at 11 o'clock when they bring the little canned radio out and it's playing and I'll come downstairs and be like, guys, it's a little loud. It's a little loud. And they're like, oh yeah, sorry.
Super nice.
I wouldn't say super nice.
Okay.
They know that this grumpy old fuck lives above them. I've never called the police. I've never called anyone in 30 years. I've never done it because I get it. But it's kind of like, guys, could you just... I have a couple of people that are there that say he's cool. Let's turn down the radio. It's fine. Sorry, George. Sorry, George. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Great.
I love that sometimes lemons really do bring it out of a guest.
Sorry,
yes.
You hear the
No,
anger.
it's great. It's great.
No, it's amazing. You're really giving me Paul Giamatti vibes.
Oh, okay, that's right. Yeah.
So those are lemons. We're each going to do peaches, which are 3 good things that have happened, are going to happen, whatever good shit. I'll blaze through mine. Number 1, even though I hated the movie, getting to watch Multiverse of Madness with Jory after seeing each other in person and working all day was just both of us fucking howling. I haven't actually been able to hang out with him in person in literal years, despite talking every day. So that was great. Been listening to Doughboys again, which I always fall off of podcasts. I'll listen to them nonstop and then just not touch it for months and months. And I'm back. It's still fucking hilarious. It kills me. Recent guest of this show, Matt Apodaca, is their most recent guest on the latest episode where they talk about the Nintendo flavors at Cold Stone Creamery.
So you mentioned this. What flavors are there? Can you be specific about this?
There's a special Nintendo promotion where there's a Kirby ice cream and an Animal Crossing ice cream and a Mario ice cream. And the resounding consensus amongst everyone is all of these fucking suck. These have nothing to do with Nintendo and none of them are even good. Why would you put caramel with strawberry ice cream? It's weird. So I really recommend that episode. But also it's wow, we just talked to Matt and he's talking to Mitch and Wags. Look at it. It's podcast transitive property. And then my third peach is that I had some Portos for the first time in several years as well.
Yeah, okay.
What is that?
It is a big, very old Cuban bakery in Glendale.
Yes, very famous. Lines out the door.
Very famous.
Yeah.
And they run a well-oiled machine. When you go in there, it is going to Disneyland and it moves.
The line snakes just like in Disney.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, you're going to get on a roller coaster. It's super cheap. I don't know how they manage to keep it as cheap as it is for how high quality it is. Because you go up, you can get a beautiful Cuban sandwich, 3 potato balls, a slice of cake, a little chocolate twist. They have so many of those beautiful little desserts. And you get out for $25 and you're eating for a weekend with snacks.
Volume, baby. Volume.
Totally.
They've got great coffee. They've got great orange juice. They do fresh squeezed. I just adore Portos. It's the greatest.
What did you have?
I got Cuban sandwich, then some variation on a Cuban, and it's a good Cuban sandwich too. And then I got, so they have the potato balls, but they also have little chicken croquette ones. They also have a pepper and cheese one. So I got a variety of those. I got some cookies that are filled with dulce de leche. Amazing. Chocolate croissant twist kind of deal. Some carrot cake and some chocolate cake.
Carrot cake. Oh, it's my favorite.
It's very good. Yeah. And they're just beautifully presented. They've got the little chocolate leaves on the chocolate cake.
Yeah, they're gorgeous stuff.
Yeah. So now I need to go back because fuck. It used to be like a weekly thing for me. On Fridays, I would go visit Jory and we would get Portos.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Oh, that's fun.
But before the pandemic, we would hang out like every Friday and go get Gamtubop or Portos and watch bullshit. So it's kind of been a return to form of late, which is nice.
That's great.
So yeah, good peaches. Who else has peaches?
George?
Well, sure. I have this thesaurus app on this new machine that I just adore. I will literally just look up synonyms of words for ridiculous amounts of time. I catch myself because I'll go there to find something and I'll just get into these lovely recursive loops of like, oh, okay, what is the synonym of the synonym of the synonym? It always extends a little bit further. Like Wikipedia pages kind of go inside each other, again, from Multiverse of Madness sequence. But it's a thesaurus and it's just so enjoyable. And I catch myself just finding words that mean the same thing as other words. And I love it.
What's the app?
It came with my iMac. It's very simple. You just put the words in and it's just, I'm enjoying it more than any video game because I'm not a gamer at all. And I realized like, this is my Mario Kart.
Yeah.
So there's that. I'm not a candy guy. I love sweets. I love baked goods like cookies and brownies and give me a good Viennese pastry table and I will just sleep there for a weekend. But I've gotten to love Skittles freezer pops. They're like this frozen tubes of happiness.
Yeah.
And they're Skittles brand. I don't know if this even relates to the flavor necessarily, but they were just happened to be my Wegmans. And I had this while it was 95 degrees. I was like, let me get some frozen pops. 5 of them is 90 calories, which is awesome. You snip the end off and you just hork this thing. You have a nice sequence.
Nice dick of sugar.
Dick of sugar. Yeah. Sour apple, orange, lemon, cherry, and grape. Those are the 5 flavors. And you get these like sausage casings. The box says 24 or something. And oh my God, so good.
Are they like a nostalgia thing for you? Because for me, it's always when summer hits and Walmart has the big cardboard thing in the middle of the store with just the bags of liquid.
Yes.
Yep.
I've never had the Skittle version.
Yeah, a little bit of that. But as a kid, I didn't really have those. To me, it's just like this lovely, relatively low calorie treat that takes time to eat, which is always key.
Yeah. What's your favorite flavor of the 5?
I'm a cherry nut. I'm like anything that's fruit punch or cherry. I'm always that. But then it's a nice palette because you go from the kind of bittery lemon to the sweet orange to the bittery green apple to the grape, which is just its own weird world, to ending up with the cherry. And it's a nice little mouth journey that you have. So there's that. The other thing is I'm a sucker for a good Latin phrase. One of my favorites is ubi dubium ibi libertas, which means with doubt there is freedom, which like I forced myself to learn. But I found another one, which is dum spiro spero. Dum spiro spero, which means while I breathe, I hope. Isn't that nice?
Oh,
isn't
very
that nice?
nice.
Into that.
I thought that was really nice. Theocritus in the 3rd century is the first guy that wrote it down, apparently, although by the time he wrote it down, it had been like used for 100 or so years. So yeah, dum spiro spero.
Wow.
And there's got to be some Greek or whatever term for whatever that the spiro sparrow. It's not alliteration, but it's something like that's kind of assonance or whatever that is.
Oh, yeah, right.
Spiros, but whatever that means.
Those are such lovely peaches.
Yay.
Brian,
Yes.
what are your peaches?
Well, one of them I already talked about, which is this Nord Stage 3. So I'm not going to talk about the Nord anymore. My second peach is we have started regularly making big ice cubes, like inch and a half ice cubes. Fucking awesome. We have just this drawer of gigantic fucking ice cubes and they work in everything. I've been turning, hot teas into iced teas. You just dump a bunch of them. I have this giant mug. It's like dropping cold bombs into it. It's so great. And we just keep making them. And we used to make them occasionally. Had this ice tray for a while, but now I have regular large ice. And it is honestly a game changer. And it's so great for cocktails. Like with an old fashioned or something. I remember hearing about this a while ago and being like, hipster bullshit, stupid big ice cubes. Who fucking cares? No, it's actually better. It is measurably better. It makes it less watery.
You feel classy.
Yeah.
Yes. You can hear this rattling around here. I put a big ice cube in this thing 2 hours ago and it's still in there.
God damn.
It's sizable too. And my final peach is my daughter starts 3rd grade tomorrow. She is 8 years old and starting 3rd fucking grade.
Wow.
There's an old Tig Notaro bit where She's talked to some friend and the friend's like, my kid's going into 3rd grade. Can you believe it? And she goes, yeah. What I wouldn't be able to believe was the opposite, was if your kid stayed 5 forever. That I couldn't believe. I can totally believe that your child is aging and getting older and going into successively higher grades. That's the most believable thing there is. And yet my reaction is, I can't believe it. Can't believe that she's in 3rd grade.
You're also rapidly approaching the point where you have to explain to your child what your band does.
Yes.
Do you have some kind of timeline?
I mean, nothing that I've thought about too hard. What does she know? She knows I dress up like a ninja. We let her listen to the cover albums. That's, of course, no problem. They're all radio hits. There are certain songs she can listen to. We have some songs that don't have swearing, or they're not written to be kid-friendly, but they kind of fell into it. Other than that, she knows there are certain songs she's not allowed to hear yet. Now, why she's not allowed to hear those, we have been kind of vague about. We just said they're not for kids. They're not for kids. I have my kids' band. She can hear, of course, all that. She's on half the fucking songs. Like, she knows that stuff.
Sure, but one day your little gamer is going to learn what Starbomb is.
Yeah, well, that's the bigger issue, is not Ninja Sex Party, but Starbomb, which is the hip-hop band that has a very, very explicit song about fucking Kirby, one of her favorite characters.
Right. Maybe I was thinking about the Zelda one and also the Mario. Yeah.
Is there a special savings account for the therapy money, or is that...
Yeah, it's called My Savings Account. Yes, that's where it's all going. Well, we had a conversation the other day, because I like to, in the proud tradition of fathers everywhere, annoy my daughter by singing. And I have a character I break out occasionally called Rappin' Daddy. I'm the rappin' daddy, and I'm here to say that I love my daughter every day. That kind of stuff. And she hates it, or pretends to hate it.
Well, that's good.
As she should.
And she said something to the effect of...
derivative, Dad, derivative.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 40 years out of date with those rhymes.
Nice Adidas, Dad.
Yeah. And so I mentioned my rap band. She's like, you don't have a rap band. It's like, actually, I do have a rap band. Now, I don't rap in it, but I am a member of a rap band, and we sing about video games. And as soon as I said it, I was like, oh no.
Oh shit.
Why did I mention this? There's one song she can listen to from Starbomb, which is our Donkey Kong Jr. song from our most recent album. And it is about how Donkey Kong Jr. is a big silly oaf. And that is very kid-friendly. It's silly. It's fun. She loves it. She can hear it. And I was like, oh, it's that. But the other songs you can't hear yet. And all I said is they're not for kids. Now, there is a clock somewhere counting down to the moment she hears these songs for the first time, which may or may not be, and probably by that time it will be because she's looking up my stuff, but it's possible she encounters them out there in the wild. They exist on, if you Google Zelda or whatever, it might show up somewhere. I don't know.
Does she have like internet access on her own, or is it always supervised?
No, it's always supervised. Yeah.
Does she have a phone?
She does not.
She does not.
An 8-year-old does not need a phone. And she's like, but I want to text my friends. And I'm like, honey, you can't spell. So.
To be fair, a lot of adult texters can't spell.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember in the early 2000s when phones like the Migo or the Firefly were big, where it was like, here's a phone you get specifically for your young child.
Yeah.
You can call your mom, your dad, or 911. And I just feel like those should come back.
I think they actually do have something like that. What we are thinking about doing is, because we don't have a landline anymore. So if we want to leave her home alone, which we would not for any extended period of time, maybe for 10 or 15 minutes at 8 years old.
Short tour, like the 3-city tour.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. And not for any good reason, just because we kind of feel like it.
Yeah.
I would want some device she could use to call 911.
Yeah.
We don't have a landline. So I think we might get a thing that we hand to her when we leave the house and say, look, we're going to be out for 20 minutes. If there's an emergency, use this. Because if we're out, our phones would be with us.
Don't those doorbell deals have that?
Oh, maybe. We don't have those.
Rings.
We have a doorbell camera, but it doesn't have that. Yeah.
I think there are some that have that kind of 911 option.
The little tiny phone that I was using last year, I feel like this would be good if she was older, because it's still a smartphone. It's just tiny. And if you locked it down a bit, it would be just like perfect.
Yeah, totally.
Little guy.
I didn't think about it until we left her home alone for 10 minutes the other day for the first time ever.
Wow.
And I was like, oh shit, there's like literally no way for her to call for help while we're out because we have both phones.
Yeah.
You know, the landline doesn't exist in this house anymore.
You can also just get like a little dumb phone, like a little Nokia slider or something.
Yeah, that might be the way to do it.
There are also cute little flips that you can still get. There are like some Hello Kitty ones that like, if she wanted to text, she would have to learn how to do T9.
Right. Yeah. No, but she asked, I want a phone. And I was like, absolutely not. There's some like parenting pledge you can take, which is like no screens till 13 or something like that.
Yeah.
What it's called something pithy. I can't remember. Well, wait till 8th. That's what it is. Where you say you're going to wait till 8th grade to give them phones. And her school has like a no phones on campus policy. End of story. If you're on campus, phones are not allowed. Now they have laptops and whatever. We had to actually buy her a Chromebook for the first time this year. But no. Long answer to she does not have a phone and she's not fucking close to getting one because I absolutely refuse to support that. But we also like, if we're out at a restaurant or whatever, no screens. Like you are not going to be on an iPad, on your phone, or we bring a book. You can definitely bring a book, bring an activity book, bring something to read, but it drives me insane to see little kids just staring at phone. And look, I get it. Yeah. Kids are annoying. Yeah. It's hard to have a kid in a restaurant. But every time I see a kid on a screen in a public place, I have a visceral...
It's not good, man. You're making these weird connections in their head where the reality and the expectation and then the tech, it all gets jumbled. And 6-year-olds, 8-year-olds with screens.
And younger. I see 3-year-olds in restaurants. So kids in strollers... Oh, I hate it.
And then they get so upset when you take it away. Like, issue. Anyway, wow, we've really gone over time talking about this shit.
I did see something funny. Someone responded to the other day. And look, it's not like we say no screens. We let her watch TV and play games and stuff. I was like, okay, Audrey, this is 9:30, 10 a.m. No screens until after lunch. And of course, she says, can I have lunch? Which is... I mean, you're like, you got to love it. Right. And someone replied to that tweet with, when I was little on vacation, my mom said, no video games unless we're in the car. So we stole our keys and locked ourselves in the trunk and played video games all day. Which, like, kids are, as a scientist type person, I love the letter of the law kind of arguments.
The malicious compliance, yes.
Yes, that's right.
It's problem solving.
And you know what? I rewarded that yesterday. I was like, I'm very impressed. You know what? I'll play a video game a little earlier than I thought, and you can watch me because I appreciate the hustle. And speaking of the hustle, George and I are going to be on tour.
Oh, that's
right. And you can get those tickets at ninjasexparty.com. We'll put a little bumper in front of this too. But for context for everybody, so we have the main Ninja Sex Party tour, and on off nights from that, I'm doing something called Ninja Brian's All-Star Variety Spectacular, featuring me, George, the Super Guitar Bros, our friend Jim Roach, and George is on every September date except the Bloomington one.
That's right.
So on the other dates, we have a bunch of other acts, but I think you're on 6 out of 11 of those shows, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
Something like that. So anywhere in September except Bloomington, that'll be a show with both me and George and a bunch of other people. And it's going to be really fun. They're at smaller venues than the NSP shows, and it's a lot looser and, kind of faster, new acts every 15, 20 minutes, something like that. So it's going to be fun. And I haven't actually said this, I think, publicly. Well, I kind of hinted at it. These are going to be the world premieres of my smooth jazz tracks for this album that I've written and getting final mixes on, I think, today or tomorrow. So for the first time, I'm going to be playing these for people publicly and performing them. So we'll see how it goes.
It's going to be great.
Yeah, I'm very excited. It's going to be a lot of fun.
If people want to get tickets, where do they do that?
ninjasexparty.com/tour or just ninjasexparty.com, and you can click TOUR at the top of the page, which spells tour.
Have your 8-year-old child do it.
Yeah, that's right. Give them a phone.
And your credit card.
Buy some tickets. Right. Yeah, George, thanks for being here. And I'm excited to be on the road with you.
Thank you. And yeah, like I said, this is the first multi-city tour I'm doing, which I'm very excited for. And thanks to both of you for letting me come and chat about things from the 50s for a while.
It's always a joy.
Anytime. George, if people want to find out more about you and what you do, where can they go?
Yeah, just go to georgehrab.com. Hrab is my last name. You Google that, and I'm the first 47,000 things. So Easy peasy. Easy peasy. And if a truck does drive by and throw something out the window, please whoop and yell because it'll make your neighbors happy.
Yeah. And if you're in Bethlehem and you hear that, they'll know exactly where you live.
Hey, George must live here because look at these 6 soulless shells of humans sitting out here at 2 a.m.
Love it.
Wow. All right, folks. Thanks for listening. You take care out there. I don't have anything pithy.
What a half-hearted sign-off.
It's too hot for a sign-off.
I'm looking at a first edition Why I Want to Fuck Ronald Reagan by J.G. Ballard, like original print for a cool $1,786 on Abe Books. So,
worth it.
That's
wow.
Worth it. So worth it.
Yeah.
You can use it to like dab your forehead and absorb the sweat.
Yeah. All right, folks. Don't fuck Ronald Reagan. See you next time.
Great. Good advice. Bye. Late Night is produced by Brian Wecht, Leighton Gray, and Jarek Centeno. Follow us on Twitter at Leighton Night, on Instagram at Leighton_Night, or email us at leightonnight@gmail.com.